SEO and AI, the word I heard is that experiences more and more people are going to ChatGPT to say, hey, where do you recommend of a good coffee shop in Raleigh?
So, if you're looking for a great coffee spot in Raleigh right now, you've got a few really good choices. One standout is the Left Hook Coffee. They've been getting a lot of buzz recently and have even been ranked the best in the area. They're planning to expand, so that tells you how popular they've become. Another solid option is Jubala Coffee, which is kind of a local staple. They're known not just for their coffee, but also for their biscuits, so you get a nice little treat on the side. If you're into more creative lattes or even tea, then Black and White Coffee is a great pick. They have a reputation for high-quality, inventive drinks. For a more community-oriented vibe, Soda Coffee Cafe is a favorite. It's a lively place that locals love, so you'll definitely feel like you're part of the scene. And lastly, if you want something that's gained traction in the last few years, The Optimist is another good spot. They opened around 2020 and have built a nice reputation for being a welcoming place. So those are a few you can check out and see which vibe suits you best.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And the word is that this is having a higher conversion rate than search is. So I want to have a conversation with some people I know and respect in the area of SEO, web, research, and thinking on this topic. And I thought we'd start by just going around for a quick introduction. David, would you begin, Ammerland, and give a brief introduction? You're a multifaceted Renaissance man. I hope that's a compliment to you. It is to me.
Thank you. Yes, sure. Let's start. My name is David Ammerland. I've been active in search pretty much since 1995, when we actually had handwritten catalogs with links to go across the web. I've written the first book which came out for Google Semantic Search, which is actually called Google Semantic Search. Between 2012 and 2020, I was advising Fortune 500 companies on their search marketing strategies. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Outstanding. Robin, would you go next?
Absolutely. My name is Robin Whirling, and I actually have David's book in that bookcase right behind me. And we met years ago in Raleigh after the book came out, or virtually. I can't even remember. I meet so many people virtually and in person that I can't tell them apart anymore. I have been working in digital marketing for over 25 years, and definitely this conversation is much needed because I've never seen so many small and medium businesses so confused and not knowing who to trust and who to listen to. So I am very grateful for your inviting me today.
My name is Frank Jones, and I started building websites back in the 90s, back before there were books and courses on such things. So whenever I've been teaching classes on the subject, it's been challenging to receive questions from students asking what courses and books do I recommend, and I started before they existed, as it sounds like many of us on the call have that kind of depth of experience. I ended up actually getting degrees in philosophy and political science, which I find really useful with these latest language model tools because essentially in school, I studied how to ask questions. And you can get a lot better answers out of language models if you understand how to create the questions. So it seems like instead of studying software development, studying questions in philosophy might end up being a golden ticket for the years ahead.
All right. Who would like to begin with this? How is it changing? What's going on? What people should be doing?
If I start by picking up Robin's points, she talked about trust and small businesses and small to medium businesses, and also understanding what to do. Now, when it comes to search, across the entire history of search, those two things have been constant. If people don't understand what it is that they're there to do, then they don't do it correctly, they get confused, they throw money away in the wrong thing, and then they exhaust their resources, especially if they are small to medium enterprises. And then their trust begins to erode. So when somebody else comes along who knows what to do and tries to tell them, they sort of take that with a pinch of salt. So clarity here is important. So when it comes to understanding what it is to do in the new landscape, and I use that within inverted commas, of search, some of the fundamentals are still there. A business still has to adequately, clearly express, explain, communicate what it is it actually does. And in that context, it needs to be able to also communicate what is it that makes it different. And the classic example, you ask ChatGPT about coffee shops in your area, it mentioned 4 choices, and they're all different. Even though the coffee is the coffee, and the taste of the coffee within a certain spectrum is going to be acceptable in any of those 4. So if we were to choose amongst the 4 of us where to go from those 4 choices, we'll have to gravitate towards perhaps what's nearest, what's within our budget, if we have that issue, what's within our tastes, and what's within our own acceptance of the culture of the coffee shop, if that's important to us. So if that coffee shop is trying to attract us, then it would have to work with those principles in mind. And that comes down to absolutely fundamentals, right? What's the identity of your business? Really, truly, the identity of who you are. Why do you do what you do? How do you do that differently? What's the passion that has to come across in the things which you do? And then the challenge is, how do you communicate that across the digital spectrum consistently enough, clearly enough, and persistently enough for AI robots to pick it up, begin to synthesize it, and present it in their answers, and also for people to engage with, because at the end of the day, any kind of search always follows people and their actions.
I'll go ahead, since he kind of touched on the points of trust, small, medium businesses, and remaining consistent. A lot of the people that I talk to have so many questions, and they're already confused by the time I even get on a call with them. What I have been doing a lot of lately is saying, okay, everything, no matter what, wins with consistency. So it doesn't matter how many different new things there are, or what changes, or if algorithms change, or if people are using large language models instead of search engines. At the end of the day, consistency and making sure that everything is accurate wins over anything else. I have been telling people to kind of go back to fundamentals, go back to your Google business profile, and make sure that everything is correct there. Make sure that your name, address, and phone number appear correctly. Make sure your address is exactly what it is in Google Maps. Reword your business description to be able to be a little bit more. Now, Martin, you and I went through the Hummingbird change when I was in North Carolina, actually. And so I remember, because I work primarily in paid search, but I work with a lot of SEO companies because a lot of it goes hand in hand. And so a lot of times I remember us going through telling people that, okay, you're going to have, instead of 1 or 2 or 3 keyword strings, you're now going to have long tail keywords. It might be a full sentence. It might be 2 sentences. And so, that's where the semantics came in so important. Now what I do is tell people, what you have to do is make sure that whether people are looking on a search engine, or whether they're looking on maps, or whether they're looking at reviews, or whether they're looking at Google Business Profile, they don't really understand how all of that works. All they understand is they pick up their phone and they want something quickly. And so what has changed is, instead of me saying noon and I've got coworkers with me and what's a pizza place near me, and that being a short to a medium tail keyword string, and it being rendered through proximity, now what's going to happen is people are going to say, we need a place for lunch. There's 12 of us. 3 of us are vegetarians. We want to be able to sit by the water. We want it to be lively because we want to have cocktails, but we don't want it so loud that we can't talk. And we want cauliflower crust pizza as well. And so what I have noticed from the large language models is that instead of it taking the information that we put on the website, us talking about us, it seems to be pulling more from what other people are saying about you. So there's definitely a lot more of the AI overviews that are looking into the reviews for information. And so, you know, reviews are, of course, more important than ever. That seems to be a constant theme. And just making sure that your basics are down and what you do and what category you're in is the most important thing right now, so that you can be found by any of them.
I have been feverishly adding notes, so I'm going to try not to go too far off the rails and just touch on several things, and then we can come back to any of them that are important. I think most of them connect to David having a book on semantic search and how important that is in today's landscape, understanding those ideas of for a long time now in the search engine optimization world, there has not been a single list of rankings. And we're moving further into that kind of world. So, Martin, the search that you ran on ChatGPT at the start of the call had a UK type of accent. And they mentioned one of the coffee shops has really good biscuits. Now, we're also in the South, so I don't know if they meant little dessert breads or if they meant little things that are stuffed with egg and cheese. Which type of biscuit are they referring to? And this sort of connects to whether or not you have memory turned on. Martin, perhaps you're a really big fan of English biscuits, and it knows that about you and identified a coffee shop that has the best biscuits for the UK audience. Or maybe it knows that you're in the South and that you have a hankering for a ham, egg, and cheese biscuit in the morning. I don't know why it suggested that would be important to you. But if I were to do the exact same search, I may or may not receive the exact same set of answers. And that connects with what Robin's talking about with how the search is going to be even more hyper-specific. But the example that Robin shared, as I understood it, still relied on the user to say all of those words. And as you have memory saved in these language models, the user's not going to say most of the words. The language model is just going to understand the context. The user asked for a coffee shop, and they know all of this other information about that user. And so when they say best coffee shop, there's not a single answer. In the Wild West, I mentioned starting building websites back in the 90s, you would literally put the word best coffee shop all over your page in white text with a white background, and that's how you would rank for best coffee shop. Today, best is subjective, and the tool that's doing the search knows enough about the user to add in the details that the user doesn't even know to include to describe what does best even mean. And also related to what David was saying with trust in the industry, this is one of the reasons that I like to begin all engagements with free content and free events like the conversation that we're having here, where different subject matter experts can come out and talk about their opinions and ideas about things, and also talk about what are the facts that we can point to, demonstrable tests that we've done. And we can tease out which is the facts of things that we've tested and which are the opinions that we each have about the direction that the world might be heading. And then clients can decide who most aligns with their worldview of what might be happening around them, and position their business to take advantage of those trends.
Excellent. Oh, I'm going to jump in because comment on all of them. I think this is the time to humanize and personalize more than ever, and narrowcast to who really is your customer and who isn't, which is what, Robin, I've been teaching for now, 15 years. And I need to give credit, Robin. You know David because of me. That's where the book came, because he was the origin for me learning semantic search. So, David, you can see the ripple effect there. I want to let you feel the love while we go through this. But I think this is more important, that people realize that human quality, the human experience, is going to still give them a pretty good competitive advantage. Now, that also means the website needs to have a good Q&A section, and you need to dot your I's of consistency. If they're looking over multiple platforms, you're right, they're going to be pulling reviews from more than one place and that type of information. But in my early testing of this is one place I looked up in a class I know, I asked about working with kids, and they are excellent at it, but I looked in their content and their videos, it didn't have as much information. This is, to me, this humanize and personalize of good quality video, good quality content, definitely Google Business Profile, and is more important, because I think the risk is trying to game the system, which is what everyone goes for. I've got the secret sauce. I'm going to post things on Reddit until I'm thrown off, and then I'll create a new account and so forth. And what I've learned over the years is black hat, as we used to call it, means you might be number one in one area for a short time, but you're on page 13 soon after. And I want to just say, there was someone at the Outer Banks, I remember a real estate guy, and he says, no, we got a person who knows someone at Google. And I said, what you're doing is getting you on number one with Google, but you will be on page 12 sooner than you think. And it literally happened. Like we're saying, fundamentals of knowing who you're speaking to, understanding, like Frank's value is, lead with some good quality education, information, speak to their world so they feel they're heard. And then also, if your customers say, I'd love to write a review, you might want to give more terms that explain it. Like you said, Robin, we've got a great environment where you can see the lake and relax. If that's true, get that content out there. So that's my beginning, is get to basics. The competitive advantage that small businesses don't want to do is they want to hide behind a brand. And that's the competitive advantage that doesn't cost as much.
I want to throw a small shift in what you were saying there with white hat versus black hat SEO. One of the ways that I sort of sidestep the ethical question of whether this is a good thing or bad thing is I like to present it based on the type of business you're trying to build. So if you're trying to sell fidget spinners, that is a fad. It's going to die in about 6 months. We're all old enough to have seen that fad come and go. If you're doing a fad business like fidget spinners, my recommendation is do all the black hat SEO. Sell all the fidget spinners you can and burn all the bridges, because in 6 months, you don't have a business anyway. If that's not your business, if you're building the local HVAC company and you'd like to have leads coming in 10 years from now, you probably don't want to do the same marketing strategy that the 6-month fidget spinner salespeople are doing. And this way, I don't have to convince somebody to change their ethical stance on it. I can simply ask them, what type of business are you building? Do you want to keep getting customers 10 years from now? Or do you want customers for the next 6 months and watch the business burn?
I just think that's great.
Everybody figures out really quickly where they want to be.
That's just great. Dave, I can see you thinking over there.
Yeah, first of all, I love the discussion, right? Back into 2012, and we're coming into the differences now of the new landscape. Google experimented using Google Plus with sentiment analysis, and they do it using metrics and the interactions between different profiles, and they had obviously full access to that social media platform at the time. And it was kind of a hit and miss. We could see that some things in search were coming up, but it was not very effective. It was still easy to game, and within Google Plus, we actually carried out a few experiments where we were able to, with sufficient interaction and comments, to drive search results up on Google search. So it was still very raw in many ways. Now, large language models, as Robin has pointed out, don't do that. They basically look at patterns and they synthesize and generate probabilistic effects of language. So they're very good at pattern recognition which is why essentially what we would call today sentiment analysis comes from the interaction and what people say about a brand. That's why they don't rely on the website as much. So if we get down to the nitty-gritty of practicalities, for a small business that doesn't have a lot of expertise, doesn't have a lot of budget, and is really looking at what to do, it comes down to what you said, Martin: humanize it, narrowcast it, get in front of it, actually be the face of your business as you would in person. I mean, if somebody walked into your coffee shop and that's your only business, and you never come out to say hi to your first customer, for instance, what kind of message does that send to that customer about how welcome they are, how attentive you are, how focused you are? So the things which we do naturally, now we have to figure out how we do them digitally. How do you attract your local people? How do you encourage them? How do you reward them with your attention? How do you amplify what they say by actually engaging with them? Somebody says, I love your coffee. I've been to 2 coffee shops and, this is the best one I've tasted. Well, instead of just saying, that's great, you would say, well, yeah, because I go into all these lengths to pick that particular brand of coffee. And this is how we basically prepare it before we serve it, because you're real about it. And that then resonates with that person. And that connection is made. And I think a lot of the times the confusion arises in not knowing exactly how to translate this into the digital domain, but also not thinking that we have to translate that into the digital domain. We look at tools and we look at buttons and we think, okay, it's easy to do something. We can just create some kind of content, press enter. We can put some kind of content, put in those keywords, and we think we're done. And we're not really done, because those are just tools, and those tools often don't reflect exactly what we do. And in that gap between what a business does in terms of identity, and Frank mentioned philosophy later on, it's an existential thing. If you can't get across who you are truly, what are your values? What is your business? Why do you do this business and not any other kind of business? If you can't get that across in your presentation, in your content, in your website layout, in your social media content and how that comes across, then you're going to miss out, because essentially large language models filter those things, synthesize them, see what the audience does, and then they basically then present the answers. So as an owner, as a business owner, that's a challenge. How do I get my humanity, my passion, my focus across into the digital domain? And a certain amount of experimentation is required. But the good news is that it's also the great leveler, because large companies right now are not thinking like this. And in the past, they had the manpower to create deep content, to create link strategies, to obviously, because they're a brand, they're immediately trusted by search, and they would always come up on top. And if you're a small to medium enterprise these days, you actually have, at this stage of the game, equal access to search. But you got to get yourself out there.
Okay, I got to jump in because I'm so excited about what you said. There's a new coffee shop, and I'm not going to call them out, but they know who they are because I'm sending it to them. And they didn't want to be on camera. And I thought of the next time I go in, I said into the place, I'm going to say, now when I come into the store, I want you to hide behind this area and don't come out and say hello. And they're going to go, why? I say, well, that's what you're doing when you're not willing to get out on video in your business virtually. See, they don't want to be on video, but they wouldn't think if you walk in the door to hide behind a pillar and not even say hello. And you just gave me the teaching tool. Robin, if you were in one of my classes, I'm going to stand someone up and I'm going to have them speak as though I'm coming and welcoming them in the business. I'm going to hide behind something, because that's just what you said. And it's a doorway they have now. If they move fast on it, that they won't later. And that's where, no, don't just take AI junk and throw it out there. Everyone's doing that. This is the time to maximize the things that are uncomfortable and make you feel vulnerable and put you out there. Your competition is reluctant to do as well. That's why embrace that now. That's my sermon. I'm sticking to it.
I think the video can definitely be helpful. I'm not arguing against that idea, but I also like to meet clients where they're at. And rather than pushing just for video content, I simply broaden that to pushing for content. so many small businesses put up a website and then don't touch it for years. And you go to these websites and you wonder, are they even still in business? So before we get too worried about search engine optimization and all these strategies and all this kind of stuff, just the very basics, do something. And I recommend publishing an article on your website at least once a week and publishing something on all of your social media profiles at least once a day. And this is one of those areas where that AI generated content has changed the game. Before the language models were available, I would tell people to just go to whatever platform on social media they're most active in, because they're one person, they can only be in so many places at one time. But now that you've got the language models, if you're using good quality prompts and feeding good quality data, then you can get nice short format social media posts that you can schedule and put up in a variety of different places. The most important piece is what David was getting at with that story. Being able to explain why it is that you're doing what you're doing, what makes it unique. And I always like to point people to start with the hero's journey. The classic story arc, if you've ever watched a movie or read a book, you already know the storyline. Some hero is sent off on a quest. They have to save the day. They meet a friendly shopkeeper or a wizard along the way that teaches them the trick that they need, and they win the day. You don't ever have to watch a movie again. I've just told you all of them. And most businesses, the first mistake that they make is they think that they're the hero. You are not. Nobody cares about you or your business. Your hero is the customer. You are the friendly shopkeeper that they meet along the way that helps them to save the day. So take all of your customer interactions, that customer that comes in and says that you have the best coffee in town. Take that exact scenario, put it into that story framework of this person's looking for the best coffee in town. They come into your shop, they learn about how you roast your beans and where you source your product, and they win the day fully caffeinated, being able to go off to work. Now you write that as a blog post, somewhere around 1,000 words, publish that on your website. Then you take that as the content to inform your social media posts. The language model can take your 1,000-word story and turn it into 10 social media posts. As you're putting these words out onto the internet, you've got to make sure that you have your data analytics platforms in place. And then you look at the data to see what words did I put in front of humans on the social media channels, on my website, in all these different places that encourage the humans to do a thing, to click on the link to call me, to fill out the form to schedule a lead, to click on the map link to find their way to my coffee shop. That's the data that all these small businesses have. And ultimately what we're trying to understand is, what can I say that encourages people to do business with my company? And how can I put that in front of the largest audience possible? The language models are taking that same content, pulling it in, remixing it a little bit, and then answering the question of who has the best coffee shop in Raleigh. And really, it's based on that content that's been pushed out by all those other coffee shops. The best might be the one that just opened up that hasn't published anything, but the language model doesn't know about it, because if it's not on the internet, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I want to say I really love that, Frank. And the other thing to add is, with large language models, you can give a sample of the voice of your business and train it to speak in that voice. So then you still want to keep the human in the loop to make sure that is representing the persona of your business when you get it out. Excellent.
The way that I execute what you're describing, I'll have deep research go and dig into a client based on everything that they've published and everything that's been said about them everywhere, and put together a marketing document that describes everything about their brand, their voice, and so on. And then I'll bring that back to the client and see if the internet already understands them in a way that they want to be understood. If not, then we've got other problems to solve. But if so, then that document becomes a priming document to have the language model speak like them and understand their brand with any content that we're creating for them, because we've already done deep research into everything that the internet knows about their business as it stands.
I want to circle back about what you were talking about, Martin, about the Humanization and personalization. One thing that I typically ask somebody on the first or second conversation that I ever have with them is, what is your competitive advantage? What do you do in your coffee shop or your pizza place or in your garage door company? What do you do better than someone else does? Unfortunately, a lot of times people don't know, or they can't answer that question. And so helping people clearly define that. And one thing I've noticed is it doesn't seem to have the same thing like search engines, where you have time of the website, good quality content, geographic, and prevalence. Those things don't matter as much, because I have people with a brand new business that their AI overviews are spot on, and other clients where they have 2-3 generation websites, locations never moved, but they checked the box 40 years ago when they had their website built, and then 20 years ago when they built their social channels that no one ever goes on, and then maybe wrote a few blogs 5-10 years ago. Making sure that the elements that are time consuming, it's not the new sexy, it's not full of glitter, but the actual elements of what you need on your website and what you need to make sure that everybody knows who you are, what you do, how you do it, how do you do it better than someone else, and where do you do it. Those are the most important things to answer. And so that's how I kind of make it makes sense to the small and medium businesses that I talk to, and making sure that they have something written on their website, make sure that they have something written in their blogs, that when you go in to large language models and say, okay, we want, reworded content or more content about this and this in the owner's tone of voice, that they actually even have a tone of voice in there, that there's something that was established. And so I have been able to slow a lot of people down of thinking, oh, well, which bridge should we burn? And say, hey, let's make sure you have the fundamentals, and let's go back to basics and look at your fundamentals and make sure that when people are looking for you anywhere, where, make sure you're actually showing up in the basic elements of people searching for businesses.
Robin, you've mentioned the fundamentals a couple of times, and it reminded me of a real estate agent client some years ago that got back from a conference, super excited about chatbot and ads. And in the discovery phase, looking at trying to put that together for them, they asked me the question, can you do this? And yeah, I can. But I asked the question, should we do this? And when we got to looking at the website, it was the least mobile-friendly website I have ever seen. The desktop version of the menu took up 2 rows and just functionally could not be displayed on a mobile device. And we ended up fixing those fundamental issues and doubling the number of leads they were getting from the site without having to build a chatbot and without having to run any ads. So many of those businesses, like you were saying, the person that built the website 20 years ago and then set up the social media 10 years ago, they're just running from one fad to the next, and they're not using the things they already have. They probably need to start with using the tools they already have.
Yep.
This reminds me of train wrecks I've seen with small towns. The small town hires a marketing agency. They spend 60 or 100 grand. The marketing agency, I think, goes to Fiverr and gets a logo done. They come up with all this stuff. It's sexy. They deliver it, and it's dead on the vine within 6 months. And my approach to this is, why don't we walk around the town and find out what is the brand that already exists here and then amplify it? So that's related to what you're saying. What is the conversation good about this area now, and get some input from people? And then let's start with that and build out from it. And I think you can do it at this level. Getting back to basics is the important piece. Is, are you consistent? Is it clear? Is the voice of it is important, because the large language models, they're building the models. Of course, they're fixed, and then they're using web to bring in other information and weave that together. Well, they're going to go out there and look at what have others said? What's going on? What's the collective content?
When you publish this, are you going to forward the video over to Cracker Barrel?
Yeah. That's a wow. It's incredible what that time is. Yeah. Well, I do want to say something on that. They did a study when I was in IBM. They went around and they found out when we were deciding if something was good, we would only ask people in our own department. We wouldn't go out to the main customer and talk to them. A consultant said it's like you go over and go, Dave, how am I doing? And he goes, you look good over there. And they revealed that IBM was not getting grassroots feedback from the people who were their primary customers. And that was some profound insight. So, yeah, there might be something in there.
I've been actually looking at a couple of things that both Frank and Robin said and making some notes. And when it comes to actually dealing with small to medium enterprises, the obstacles that they face come under certain labels. They come under competence. They don't know exactly what to do. They're not sure about it. They come about expertise. They simply don't have it sometimes. They certainly don't have time. And a lot of the times they don't have money. So when it comes to fundamentals, I think it's really important to be able to express back to them, to actually communicate how the basic things they have to do are filtered through those 4 things. That then gives them a better idea of the effectiveness of what they do, which then reinforces their ability to do it. And it also gives them a better idea of how what they do is helping achieve the business aims that they have, because they don't understand the connection sometimes. They get into the road of, I've got to put something out, put whatever out for on a specific day, instead of putting something specific. And I think having that kind of knowledge communicated to them at a very early stage makes them valuable allies, but also it gives them the knowledge that they need for them to be more effective in what they do. And that's really important. And a lot of SEOs don't do that when they actually deal with a business.
Well, I'd like to follow up on that as well, of people being able to, because budget is a huge problem for people right now. There's hardly any generalists left. Everybody is a specialist. And so they're trying to balance between a bunch of different people talking instead of having a marketing director that has an overall view of the way that everything should work together. And so with competence and time and budget being an issue, I think one of the things when I'm at expos a lot. And so I'll tell people, come by the booth and I'll tell you how to get 25% more traffic in your first month. They'll come by and I'll say, okay, what's your company? And I'll call their company. And you can't get through to anybody. And I say, if you put a real person and a sales line, even if they just answer your click to call ads from your GBP and your actual ads that you're paying for on Google, Bing, and Meta, just that thing itself will increase your leads 25%, because no one can get a hold of anybody. No one answers the phone anymore. Going back to those fundamentals, it doesn't cost any more time. It doesn't cost any more money. Sometimes just going back to those basics and remembering how you got your first customer is by answering the door, greeting them when they come in, answering the phone, and calling people back with this thing that we never seem to use the phone part of.
Can I just add something on what Robin said about this? Because it's really important, right? We actually, earlier on, we discussed trust. And again, it was Robin that actually brought it up. And when we actually analyze trust and how it's created, especially in an environment which is asynchronous and always on, but also in person, it goes through 4 distinct stages. And those stages are contact, perception, assessment, and connection. In each of those stages, and we do this automatically as humans when we first meet a person, but certainly we do that as diligent research if we were trying as purchasers, trying to buy something through the net perhaps. But it's also done through any person researching or reaching a website, even if they're not expert at this. Fundamentally, subconsciously, they go through those stages. So when the first contact is made, is the perception that's created the one that actually will lead to a correct assessment? And if the answer is no, there you go. We stumbled at the second stage, basically. So we got people on a website and then coming away with the wrong idea and they're clicking and going away. But if the perception is correct, then the next thing is how do we help them make the right assessment? And that always is done in context. And Frank earlier mentioned context, especially with LLMs. They're incredibly good at sort of filtering the context through the search, the person who does the search query, if the history is turned on. And this is things which we need to take into account. And finally, if those things work properly, then we have a connection.
Also with the semantic search, we've mentioned a few times having memory turned on, and probably some of the folks listening don't have a very technical background. So even if you have the memory turned off, the IP address from which you're doing the search is going to influence the results that you see. So a great example of this that's been around for a very long time is the near me searches. People are not, most of the time, they're not actually typing in the words near me. They're opening their mobile device, they're typing in the word coffee shop, and the search engine is understanding that based on the IP address for the location of this device, you probably don't want a coffee shop that's 1,000 miles away. And since I also run VPNs in order to maintain security on my systems, I will frequently get results that think that I'm somewhere that I'm not. So depending on what your internet browser settings are and things like that, you might have to manually put in some keywords to be able to get the results that you're looking for in the place where you actually are in the world. There are different layers to this filtering, and it's a very sophisticated system these days.
Good point. And there's several things there. One, let's just take a moment and define semantic search. Dave, we'll let you do that for people since we've done it. And in the other phrase you just mentioned, Frank, if you want to define it so if people aren't familiar with it, we give them a little richer definition. I'm going to let the master that wrote the first book define semantic search because it really was the thing that almost killed a lot of the quote SEO people. And I've got a contact at Google. It was harder to game the system because of that change.
Absolutely. Well, at search level, semantic search is a relational database. Basically, it looks at a search query, it looks at the potential answers, it looks at a certain weighing of that answer depending on connections, and it gets very technical. But this is how it comes down at the sort of layman's level, so we can all understand it easily. It's what is most meaningful to us based on our interests, who we are, and what we do. And that's the filtering that actually the mathematics puts in place. So if we're looking, for instance, let's say for pizza as a generic query through semantic search, depending on my own searches and where I am, the type of day and the device I am using and where I am based on location, I'm looking at recipes perhaps, if I do this, I don't know, 3 a.m. in the morning on my laptop, or on my mobile phone, standing on the street corner, I'm looking for food. And that's a kind of inference on the same keyword that comes from those connections. And it's incredibly detailed and still can become inaccurate if the meanings themselves are a little bit confused. So the struggle on a business end always is how do I attain clarity in my activities? How do I clearly communicate the nature of my business, the type of business I am, where I am, what I'm good at, And then how do I then spread that across the web so that it can be independently verified through search in the first instance and through LLMs as a secondary place, which would then give credence to whatever quality I'm trying to actually get across. So that's what it is. And that's why it's so complex. When it first came out, people thought it was going to be, quote unquote, the end of SEO. We know differently now. We know it actually requires more SEO. It requires better understanding, better clarity, more attention to detail, more technical knowledge, and also more philosophical knowledge. When semantic search was first constructed, philosophers and linguists had as much role in it as mathematicians and engineers. So it's worth keeping those things in mind. And it's also worth keeping in mind that as these things progress, the web becomes more human in its interaction and more human in what it surfaces, provided we actually do the work. We put the activity out there. We put ourselves out there. We create all the content that we need to create. And we're clear about it.
See, that's important because at the time this rolled out, we would say there's no longer just number one on Google. There's your Google, your Google, you Google. Now, what Frank has brought up is not only that, if you're using a large language model and you're signed into ChatGPT, it's also working on its memory of all the other interactions inside that world. So it's like, not only is it your web experience, but your internal. You asked about a recipe earlier today and something else. So it's starting to get a sense of more of a persona of you as to me, another layer of filter when you go out. And I think that's an important point, Frank, you brought up. And would you mind kind of defining that if they don't realize that? Because I love that it's learning about me. That's why in my own ChatGPT, when I'm talking about a client, I'll say this. I don't say I'm going to set up a hairstylist place. I say a client is going to do this. I'd like your input because I don't want to start training it thinking that's me. So Frank, would you kind of define the memory? Because all these are variables involved in this new world of making our business so that it'll be picked up. Because once people get the taste of, I can talk to it like a friend and it interacts better than the early, I don't want to mention, but Amazon thing where it says, a reader said, now it's going to be hard to go back to anything else.
Yeah, this is part of the fun that I have, and I believe everybody on this call has with years of experience in search engine optimization. Is right now there's people talking about other acronyms like answer engine optimization, AEO, and generative engine optimization, GEO, and a whole alphabet soup of other things that are being pushed out there as saying that they're replacing search engine optimization. We've seen it time and again where the news media says SEO is dead, to the extent that I did an annual event in Raleigh and some of the meetup events that I would do, where every October we would have a Halloween themed conversation about why SEO is dead this year. It's always dying every year. And part of the fun that I have with this now is that a lot of these language model optimization things are exactly what we've been doing in search engine optimization for optimizing towards position 0. When the various speakers came out that you could ask questions, in order to rank in those, we called that position 0. And basically the same playbook works today. Another fun thing that I see over the years is we've been saying nice things about the language models because the technology is very sophisticated. It offers some really interesting opportunities. But we also talked a little bit about black hat versus white hat SEO. And one of the other things that remains the same is that engineers suffer from a tremendous amount of hubris. And a lot of the language model engineers have decided that in addition to taking on the technical challenge of building a language model, they simultaneously want to build an internal search engine. And those of us that have been working in search engine optimization can roll out our old playbook from the 90s and teach them all kinds of black hat tricks that don't work on Google anymore, but do work for language models today. There are people that I talk with that are doing classic 90s black hat SEO. They know right up front it does not work for Google, but they are seeing results in the language models. And it's not because the technology can't filter those things out. It's because the engineers think they're so smart that they don't have to deal with the things. One of the ways I like to describe it is that the engineers build new toys and the SEOs teach them new ways to break their toys. So it's this constant cat and mouse game back and forth, and that's one of the things that I have fun with it. With those memories that the language models have, some of them allow you to turn them on and off. Others, it's just built into the account. And there's so many different language models that you've got to try each one and sort of figure it out. The problem that I have is I see it as a black box. ChatGPT lets you see what was stored, but I don't understand what weights are given to all the things that are stored and how it's influencing the output that I receive. And so I turn off all the memory for myself. I do know a lot of people that love leaving the memory on and having a customized agent that understands them in multiple different ways and gives them custom answers. But I can create custom GPTs and I can create projects inside of ChatGPT, and I can tell those things the things that I don't want to have to repeat 1,000 times. And then I have a financial advisor or a business advisor or what have you that knows the things pertinent to giving me that information without this general purpose thing that is a black box that I don't understand why it's giving me this answer. I have a strong bias against black box solutions.
Sounds good. Well, I think we can go on for a long time. So I want to, this is exciting, and I'd like to kind of go around and see if there's anything you want to make sure you mention or something else.
I'll go first if I may. And I'm going to paraphrase Frank a little bit. That when it comes to search, the more things change, the more they remain the same. So yes, the interface becomes flashier, the equipment and the tools will have become more responsive, more powerful, more granular. But at the end of the day, we're using technology to surface people, business powered by people, to connect with people. So there are real needs there. And it's the human aspect of it that actually makes the connection work, not the flashy toys. So this is something worth keeping in mind, especially if you're a small or medium enterprise, you're struggling with time and money. This is a great leveler. Find a way to make that work, and you don't have to worry about larger competitors.
One of the things that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned is kind of piggybacking off of Dave talking about linguists. I've been on keyword scoring teams, and I keep seeing a lot of things that keywords are dead and not useful anymore. Well, last year, the search engines released a stat that 15% of search terms are new every month, that they have never been used in search before. And then talking to you this morning, Martin, the large language models are out of data to collect. And so they're going into synthetic data. So I think that keywords and people who understand different languages and how people search over time is going to be more important than ever. And I know, Martin, you've heard me use this example a lot, where my dad goes to the barber, my mom goes to the salon, I go to the spa, and my kids get a razor cut. We're all doing exactly the same thing of getting our hair cut, but we all call it something else. And so I see that where, as a small business, making sure that what you do and how you do it, very few calls to actions instead of tons and tons of tags on your site, making sure, okay, I want people to walk in the door, I want people to call me, and I want people to fill out a form fill, and make sure that the steps of how someone uses your business are very, very clear, so that the language models can pull from that and say, okay, yes, here is the pizza shop close to here, and they do have cauliflower crust, and they do have reservations and this, of those personalized things that people are looking for in the philosophical area of the keywords.
we've talked about a lot of technical things on this conversation, and since the primary audience is small businesses, I want to rein it back to those fundamentals. Just have a website, tell people what your business does, tell people what your business can do to help them over on social media, and put that content out there, speaking to your customers, sharing their hero's journey. The vast majority of businesses that I talk to are not doing simple things like that. They're doing bonehead things like changing the hours of their business every week to be able to test what time they should be open. Like, this is legitimately a thing that I talked with a business owner they were doing. And they're not understanding that people need to see that consistency before they're going to change their habits about coming to your business. They need to see that your website doesn't look like it was built 20 years ago. They need to look at your social media and see that something was published there. Later, we can talk about publishing something better. But the vast majority of businesses need to move from not publishing anything to publishing something.
Outstanding. This was great. And I'm excited for being part of this. The world's changing rapidly. I think we covered a number of things that people could walk away and use. I'll make sure I've got all of your LinkedIn's in the chat below. And I invite people to add their comments to this as well. This was just such a joy. It just worked out better than I anticipated, but I thought it was an important conversation. Thanks for all of you joining us.
Thanks. Good to see you gentlemen again.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. That was amazing.